Man claiming to be a time traveler makes some eerie predictions. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to m&rtv and hit the bell so you never miss any upload from us. Also, leave a like right now. Telling the future is generally a skill set reserved for superheroes and carnival soothsayers. One man, however, claimed to have traveled to the future and returned with some eerie predictions about global changes. People didn't really believe him per se, but his theories prompted a lot of discussion. When people dug into this time traveler's story, however, they were stunned by what they found. While you might have encountered fortune tellers at an amusement park or boardwalk, those clairvoyants tend to take incredibly vague predictions that apply to anyone and can't really be wrong. Noah the time traveler, however, is quite different. Noah claimed that he was able to visit the year 2030, write down his observations, and return back to the present. His notes understandably include some shocking predictions about global changes. Consequently, Noah took steps to conceal his identity. He was also careful not to remain in one place for too long. Naturally, this made a lot of his audience immediately discount his story, but the more watched his video, the more they were drawn in. So what did he claim to observe in the year 2030? There were plenty of strange sights, but one stands out. Let's just say that planet Earth will have some new residents by then. Noah claimed that in the future, aliens will visit our planet and crash all over the place. These visitors will thankfully come in peace, but they might look a bit menacing at first glance. Our new neighbors will have bold skin and be slender-like. Hopefully you're ready to share the roads with some giant reptiles. Noah also provided some additional information about the aliens though. He said the aliens will come from planet Louise 33. Its scientific name is reportedly 369. The goose drank wine. The monkey chewed tobacco on a streetcar line. Guess we missed that lesson in science class. Naturally, Noah's claims were rightfully met with skepticism. Those reading his predictions online had a hard time believing anything without proof. Still, something about the predictions resonated. Even his biggest critics kept watching. Next, Noah claimed he saw more than aliens during his trip to the future though. He also observed some more worldly matters. Humans in 2030, for example, live their daily lives in a strange way. Apparently, he observed humans connecting themselves to computers at night. While Noah couldn't fully understand the details of the practice, he believed that the digital link was a step towards immortality. Further, Noah said people in the future also had expanded mental capabilities. Maybe connecting to a computer allowed their brains to download facts while they were asleep. It would sure make studying easier. Oh, and park your flying car. Humans will also apparently be able to fly, at least in short bursts. We're not sure, however, if that means people will evolve to grow wings or jetpack technology will advance. By now, Noah's critics were shaking their heads, convinced his visit to the future was a complete and total sham. But then they saw the next bit of information he chose to divulge. They were hooked. Noah also took note of 2030's political situation. Given the way things are trending these days, he observed some surprising changes to the world's social landscape. Let's start in the United States. He claimed that the United States will eventually declare a massive war on North Korea. But which American president will be the one calling the shots during that global conflict? Noah stated that Donald Trump will serve a second term as president after winning the 2020 election, which is interesting considering how Joe Biden actually won the US presidential election in 2020. In 2028, however, someone even more unconventional would be moving into the Oval Office. According to the alleged time traveler, Yolanda Renee King, the granddaughter of Martin Luther King Jr., will win the 2028 election. Of course, people noted she'd only be 20 then. Maybe president election requirements would change by then too. Noah didn't check. After King, however, Noah suggested there probably won't be many more American presidents. In fact, Noah brought back notes chock full of details about a massive shakeup that will change the entire global political structure. At some point in the future, the entire world will reportedly merge into one new country, with aliens and humans living together in harmony. It only made sense for future leaders to do away with conventional borders and operate a whole new world. With all of the planet under one flag, it's also logical to unify money too. Noah confirmed that speculation, saying that a global currency will also be affected in the future. He had one last claim to make. Noah's final revelation was one that was just as bold as those which made him famous. Despite his other bold claims, this one left a lot of his readers in a state of shock. Others were less surprised. In July 2019, Noah revealed that his trip to the future was a hoax. He was just a teenager who scored 15 minutes of fame. His motives weren't all bad though. Noah, whose real name was Jason, was frequently bullied at school. YouTube, however, became his outlet. He started making videos and sending them to Apex TV, a channel known for featuring time travel stories. He became hooked on the viral fame. It was a thrill to hear people discussing his predictions. "I honestly never meant to hurt anyone," Jason said, but after that first video, it became a really unhealthy addiction. Despite Jason's ruse, people kept searching for the proof of time travel. They turned to brothers Duncan Cameron and Al Bielek, who during World War II were selected for a top-secret government study aboard the USS Eldridge. The brothers expected it to be secretive, but they couldn't have predicted the mind-bending nature of the study. Bielek was silent for years about what he experienced on the USS Eldridge, but at 60 years old, he came forward with shocking news. The Navy was developing a device that would make ships invisible to radar, and they'd been doing so for decades. Bielek was silent for years about what he experienced on the USS Eldridge, but at 60 years old, he came forward with shocking news. The Navy was developing a device that would make ships invisible to radar, and they'd been doing so for decades. This sounds far-fetched enough, but Bielek's next claim made the idea of an invisible ship sound totally plausible in comparison. It all started, he said, when he watched the science fiction film The Philadelphia Experiment. The events in the film were strikingly familiar to him. Soon after he watched the movie, Bielek began experiencing strange flashbacks. He knew intuitively that these flashes of another world weren't imaginary, but very, very real. They weren't visions, they were memories of a distant future. With that, Bielek claimed that the Philadelphia Experiment wasn't just a movie, but a real-life government experiment that he had unwittingly been involved with. At a conference in Texas in 1990, he came forward and finally told the entire story. Bielek said that a real-life version of the Philadelphia Experiment was conducted on the USS Eldridge back in the 40s while he and his brother worked on the ship. When a strange device was activated on the ship, multiple witnesses claimed that the ship was enveloped with a green-tinged fog before all hell broke loose. The ship vanished into thin air only to return 15 minutes later. Upon arrival, the crew began suffering from delirium and nausea, and those were the tame symptoms. Others were completely dismembered, and 5 sailors were reportedly found suspended in a metal flooring. Bielek claimed that he and Cameron tried to escape the ship by jumping overboard, but when they did, they didn't land in the water. Instead, they found themselves floating in what he could only guess was some physical form of time before being catapulted into the future. When the brothers finally awoke, they weren't on the ship or even in the water. Instead, they were in a hospital and covered with radiation burns. When Bielek asked what year it was, the answer left him floored. "We arrived in the year 2137, he said. The state of the world in 2137 was bleak, he discovered. The U.S. was unrecognizable as the West Coast and southern U.S. were submerged underwater. Florida had broken away from the country and sunk altogether. Before Bielek and his brother could even begin to fathom these changes, the unthinkable happened. They were once again transported through time. When he woke up again, Bielek was in another hospital room, but this one was filled with bizarre-looking machines. The advanced surgical material Bielek described allowed doctors to conduct vibrational and light treatment therapies, as a way of healing people's wounds. The TV played only news and history programs. By then, Beylik wasn't surprised when he learned the year. It was 2749, he was told, and he had trouble wrapping his brain around the technological advancements of the future. He claimed that the whole planet was controlled by a synthetic computer system and that people communicated telepathically with the help of AI technology. Despite the technological advancements, Beylik stressed that the world of 2749 was no paradise. He learned that wars between Russia and China and the US and Europe had decimated much of the planet and left most of the world under military rule. There were some potential bright sides, according to Beylik. The concept of money was obsolete in 2749, and humans had mastered anti-gravity to the extent that entire cities floated above the surface. Before he and his brother could truly explore, however, they were transported once again. But this time they went back in time. When they landed, it was in Montauk, New York in the year 1984. Disoriented and confused, they were swarmed by Coast Guard patrols and taken to a secret location where they met a man named John von Neumann. What von Neumann told them was shocking. The brothers, he claimed, were involved in a top-secret government program called the Phoenix Project, and the true aim of the project was to, you guessed it, harness time travel. Unfortunately, von Neumann explained, the USS Eldridge was now stuck in an expanding hyperspace bubble that would eventually consume the Earth. To prevent this from happening, Beylik and Cameron needed to board the ship and destroy the device. They accepted the challenge but began feeling nauseous and experienced hallucinations on the ship, just like when they were aboard the Eldridge during the initial invisible ship experiments. When they found the device, they took to it with axes. The next thing the brothers knew, they were once again in hospital beds, but this time their surroundings were familiar. They had been warped back to the 1940s, but were so confused about what they'd experienced that they kept their mouths shut for decades. It wasn't until a group of prominent scientists came forward with more sophisticated theories on time travel that Beylik began speaking on the incident. But when he finally shared his story, concerning details about his past came to light. Beylik had a shady past that immediately alerted skeptics. Apparently, Al Beylik wasn't even his real name. He was born Edward Cameron in 1916. He tried to pass this off as yet another effect of the time travel, but the damage to what little credibility he had was done. In the end, Beylik has been widely criticized for propagating whimsical fantasies as factual events. So many variations of his time-traveling adventures exist that it's hard to know what really happened, and each story is wilder than the last. One version has Beylik and his brother escaping the 2700s through a wormhole. Another posits that Beylik and Cameron were permanently separated in time. Scientists have no clue if time travel will ever be possible, but their studies of black holes bring us closer to understanding the mysteries of space than ever before.